Let's talk about id Software. Wow, do these guys love controversy. But they're responsible for one of my favorite games, Doom. I only had the luxury of playing this for the Sega 32X, so today we're going to play the Atari Jaguar version as well as Wolfenstein, which was surrounded with so much controversy, I was never allowed to play it.
Wait, aren't you going to talk about the Atari Jaguar?
Nah, it's been covered like a million times.
Oh, but I like that story.
Let's summarize.
A team working for the company named Flare Technology had made claims that they could build a machine that was far superior to the 16-bit machines that ruled the market. Atari convinced the team to leave Flare Tech and start working on two Atari systems. One was titled the Panther and the other was called the Jaguar. Progress on the Jaguar was coming along much faster than anticipated, so Atari decided to scrap the Panther and put all concentration into the Jaguar system. When it was finally released in 1993, it sported a price tag of $299 and a slogan of "Do the Math," which was a shot taken at Sega and Nintendo since Atari made claims that the Atari Jaguar was 64 bits. It was a pretty big deal. Only one problem.
None of the games look 64-bit. Stupid liar.
To be fair, the Atari Jaguar was built differently than most systems. Programmers had a hard time developing games for it, so very few games could even take full advantage of the Atari Jaguar's abilities. Because of a string of lousy games and non-existent third-party support, the Atari Jaguar was a commercial failure and bowed out in 1996.
But not all of the games sucked, as these are perfect examples of two gaming diamonds that were buried beneath a pile of poo-poo.
I've heard this version of Doom for the Atari Jaguar is supposedly the best console version out there. Not that there should be much of a problem outperforming the Sega 32X, since that was the best version I've personally played. Doom and Wolfenstein came at a time where virtual reality seemed like it was going to be the wave of the future. Anything that had some sort of 3D element or feel to it always got some sort of attention, especially when it was done well, and these two games were perfect examples of it. Unfortunately, due to the content of these games, their technical achievements were often overshadowed. Doom, for example, showcased a lot of satanic imagery. To top it off, gamers were beginning to see a new type of gore in games that really hadn't been seen before. Because of this, games like Doom were often used as political ammo by Congress and activists to place blame on specific events rather than make a real effort to find the root cause. Probably the most famous of the blame game was when the media pointed fingers at Doom as being the main culprit for the Columbine shootings in 1999. As for the game itself, it kicks so much ass it'll have you screaming for more. Everything from the sound effects to the lighting is eerie and leaves your heart beating in fear as you peek around the corners for the sound of something evil. As a kid, I had never experienced anything like this before. It stirred up a type of emotion in-game that side-scrollers really couldn't do. All of the in-game elements tackled with a well-done first-person perspective did something for gamers that would stay unique to this kind of genre. The gore itself made these monsters even scarier by how the blood came out, or the parts you could see bursting out of these enemies. It made them seem real. The bodies even fell in such a way that other games really hadn't captured yet. When you step back and you look at all of the detail and flawless gameplay, it's easy to see why games like Doom became the benchmark for later games in the first-person category. Control-wise, I definitely enjoy the Atari Jaguar version the best, which really has to do with how great the Jaguar controllers are. Some gamers hated the bulky controllers, but for me they're perfect. You can even add overlays to the keypad to help point out what each button does. Each weapon is tied to each number on the control pad, which makes for some easy, quick switching of all the weapons. In past versions, you always had to sit for a second and cycle through everything. You of course have your standard handguns and shotguns, but you'll probably find yourself using the minigun the most since it's extremely satisfying to riddle holes in your enemies. Speaking of satisfaction, just wait until you get the chainsaw. My only complaint, which is kind of a double-edged sword, is the music. where is it?
The Atari Jaguar just got Al Capone by the Sega 32X.
Seriously, even the Sega 32X had the music. The reason I say it's a double-edged sword is because Doom does seem even scarier without the music, but as others have said in the past, it still would have been nice to have the option. The weirdest thing about this is at the end of each level, it tallies up your score and whether or not you found any secrets. As this happens, the Doom soundtrack is playing, and it's the only time you hear any of the music. I still can't decide if this was intentional or if the id Company just happened to have a monkey in the office that day they worked on the background music and they were getting pelted with its own feces. How do you screw this up? Aside from the one drawback, Doom is an insane load of fun. It's actually one of the few games where cheating doesn't feel dishonorable to me. It always seems like I'll play the first 10 levels or so honest, and then suddenly I start entering codes to turn into an invincible god with all weapons. Let the carnage begin! As for the ending, it's simple, but I love it because it talks about how awesome you are. I like a game that'll boost your ego when you're done with it.
It's really too bad nobody cares about virtual reality anymore. Now all anyone cares about is stupid cell phones.
I love cell phones. I use my cell phone all the time. I can email people. I can call them whenever I want. I can even get on the internet and look up all kinds of porn. One of my favorite things to do is to get on here and play games. I have Angry Birds. I love Angry Birds.
Now we're gonna play the one game Half-Bit's mommy said he couldn't play. Wolfenstein. We're gonna be doing one thing only. Killing Nazis.
The story is kinda stupid. You're a one-man army being sent in to take on hordes of Nazis and kill a particular target. In other words, we're dealing with Data East logic here. To be fair, the story really doesn't matter because it's all about mowing down the baddies. Wolfenstein actually came out before Doom, which is why textures are not quite as detailed and all the walls and rooms are based on a square-like grid. Your weapons are basically the same thing you get in Doom. In fact, the minigun and handgun look like they were borrowed straight from the game. Holy crap! Now I see why I wasn't allowed to play this game as a kid. You might be thinking to yourself, it's just a symbol, but the difference between someone being offended by it or not has to do with whether or not you take in all of the history behind its meaning from the past all the way to the present when you look at it. I fully understand it's part of what you're fighting in the game, so to a certain extent, it's a necessary evil. The problem that I have is it's everywhere. There are some rooms that are literally just covered from wall to wall with swastikas. It gets to a point where it just feels gratuitous. To further prove my point, here's an overhead picture of one of the maps. It actually looks like the developer was playing Tetris with swastikas. Was it supposed to be an intentional find, or did someone seriously think nobody would notice?
Hey man! Hey, long time no see! I know, right? You look different. Yeah, a few changes. Let me guess. You had your teeth whitened, didn't you? Yeah, you did.
Nope,
You did.
nope,
No?
nope,
No? Alright. Let's see. Didn't you used to have glasses?
Nope.
I got it! You got fat!
You got me. I turned into a fat son of a bitch. Woo!
I told you I was gonna guess it, man. I gotcha. I love this thing.
I can see my balls. Oh my god. Who does that, man?
Apparently I'm not the only one sick of seeing all this stuff because there's one spot where a bush has been put in front of Hitler's face. Now that's funny. As far as the gameplay, it's the same deal as Doom. Instead of monster grunts, you get soldiers that yell out in German. You get a few different weapons, mostly consisting of machine guns, but you can also get a flamethrower. Your enemies for the most part are what you'd expect, but there are a few that are obviously playing off the idea of known experiments that were being done during the period. You'll take on zombie Nazis, dogs, and Drago from Rocky IV? Just like in Doom, I'll play it honest for a while, but that overwhelming urge to mow down my enemies in God mode pulls me under. And let me tell you, it is loads of fun clearing out entire rooms with your flamethrower. It makes you feel like a badass. Normally I'd have a cigar in my mouth at this point, but I quit smoking, so now I use one of those vapor smokers.
Yeah, that doesn't make me feel like a badass at all.
We are down to the final level. Given the strange bosses from before, I'm pretty curious what they're going to throw at you this time.
Guten Tag.
Let's set it on fire.
Look at that image. I mean, I don't need to comment on anything. Just sit back and take all of that in.
I killed Mecha Hitler.
If you can get past the sometimes offensive material, both Doom and Wolfenstein are fantastic games. It is interesting to note that because in Germany the use of swastikas is now a federal offense unless very specific circumstances, that all Atari Jaguar versions were confiscated. When the Super Nintendo released their version, blood was replaced with green and all swastikas or references to the Nazi Party were removed. Instead of fighting Mecha Hitler, they just removed his mustache and called him Statmeister.
The final verdict for Doom, however, is yes. The Atari Jaguar is my favorite version of the game now. And yes, this is a pimp cup. And yes, it does make my Mountain Dew taste pimpier. Meh. This isn't my couch.